report right here. It is the Plant-Based Business Hour, and I'm Elysabeth Alfano. Thank you for joining me Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays on Jane Unchained right here. I have an incredible guest today, a legal eagle who's going to be taking us through a lot of the legal issues that are plaguing U.S. wet markets. Yes, we have them. They are known as retail slaughterhouses, and they are coast to coast in this country. I just want to remind everyone why I actually do the Plant-Based Business Hour. So I'm afraid and concerned that people aren't making the connection between eating meat and the pandemic through which we are currently living. Chicago has extended their stay at home through the end of May. San Francisco has extended theirs through the end of June. What this is going to do to our public health, our employment, and our world as we know it, everything has changed because we didn't pay attention to all the signs that were there about the conditions that animals are held in, literally nose to nose and one on top of another, create this transmission from animal to animal and finally to animal to people. This was all predictable. So we need to make that connection from our food source to our quality of life. And that means factory farms. So social distancing should be applicable to animals, not just people. And it's one of the things we talk about here on the Plant-Based Business Hour, how to change the global food system. So let me take a minute to introduce my wonderful guest happening today, Carissa Kranz. She is the CEO and founder of BeVeg, and she's also a very legal eagle. Carissa, thanks for being with me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so much to talk about. You were on television today filming with CBS. What were you reporting for them there?
Well, it's really exciting that mainstream media is starting to cover the issues that we care about and have been covering here for a while. The live animal wet markets. And as we all know, but the rest of the world is a little bit in the dark with, is there are thousands of these wet markets across the United States. And we've had many people who have been on Jane Unchained who have discussed from the front lines what they are doing to try to shut them down. I had filed a petition for rulemaking in New York on behalf of about 1,000 New York residents and tens of thousands more. The petition probably has 50,000 signatures right now, to petition them to shut down all live animal wet markets and permanently ban them. If agencies were to pay attention to it, which they would be required to do based on a proposed bill that is in the New York Senate, but that bill has not passed yet. So they are not required to respond. But what we did as a law firm is we followed the exact protocol of that Senate bill that's sitting there, which would and could get politicians to act. In the Senate bill, they say that if you have more than 100 New York resident signatures, that the government should be required to respond because in essence, and in effect, the government is supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. So we cited all of that in the petition. So this is not just a petition of signatures. It was actually a petition that was drafted in alignment with the proposed Senate bill and sent through email and mail to the governor and to the public health department and to the New York City health commissioner. And the reality is there are wet live animal markets in New York in all 5 boroughs. Between 80 and 90 of them. And the Senate has even acknowledged this in 2016 in New York, where they discussed the despicable conditions of these live animal wet markets and how they're in neighborhoods that are of lower income families and how the guts, the blood, the gore, everything that's wet, that's why it's called the wet market, is going into the sewage system. It's right by parks, it's right by schools, and it has caused other businesses to close down. It has caused families to move. And no, it's not just in Chinatown. That's a question I get a lot. Is this just going on in Chinatown? And no, this is going on from coast to coast, California to New York, and in between in Illinois. So today, CBS News interviewed me, and it will air tonight at 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. So that's progress. I think that the news is starting to talk about and have a real conversation.
Well, perhaps you can help me understand this. So in 2016, it is noted by politicians that this exists, and they even note the disgusting conditions and the effect that these conditions have on surrounding neighborhoods. And you're just mentioning the public health conditions, but there's also alcoholism and domestic violence and abuse and crimes, higher rates of crimes in these communities, because what happens in a slaughterhouse is, constant killing. So of course it has negative ramifications on the surrounding neighborhoods in addition to public health. But if politicians have already called this out, where is the oversight? Why are we still addressing this with them today?
Because no law has been made. So even though bipartisan politics on both sides of the aisle are uniting and calling again for a global ban in live animal wet markets, Lindsey Graham and Cory Booker are aligning on this, trying to
if you can believe it.
Yeah, trying to get the World Health Organization to do a global ban. Even if they're successful on this, they're going to have an issue with enforcement because we don't have a world law that's really holding anyone accountable. But what we do have control of is laws that are in our own backyard. And that includes what's going on in New York. That includes what's going on in California or Chicago or Florida, where I am right now, et cetera. So any kind of ban that we can get passed by law, whether that's legislation or litigation or a petition for rulemaking where there's an agency action to change rules, it doesn't matter, but a law needs to be made. And then once a law is made, we can hold people or organizations accountable.
Okay. And even though this is federal oversight, these would be statewide laws, correct? So you're going state by state. Right now you're doing New York, and then perhaps California will follow suit, perhaps Illinois, et cetera.
Okay. My audio is a little bit bad, but I think I got what you said. So the question is either can this go state by state or can this be a sweeping ban, I think is what you're getting at.
Yes.
Okay, you're nodding. So it could go either way. So PCRM did a federal petition for rulemaking. And what that means is there is a required agency response. And they petitioned the Surgeon General for a ban in the United States. And if they are successful at that, then it will make all the efforts in California and in Florida moot. And that would be a good thing.
Yes.
But it's so important to run a parallel course, because if that doesn't happen, and litigation can take years, okay? So even if the Surgeon General doesn't say, okay, great, PCRM, we're gonna pass exactly what you said, we're shutting them down across the United States, we're done with this. If that's not successful, and you need to plan on it not being successful.
Mm-hmm. Even with both sides of the aisle, I'm surprised you think this wouldn't be successful with our current public pandemic.
I think it's a popular argument right now, but I don't know how quickly things will go into effect, because why isn't it in effect right now? Why is New York on a state of pause executive order, but live animal wet markets are still open and active while the streets are shut down? Things don't make sense. So it's important to run a parallel course. And that means that lawmakers in New York and in California and in Chicago and anywhere else where a wet market exists should be actively trying to do petitions for rulemaking, which on the state level do not require agency responses depending on the state you're in. Again, I filed one in New York based on a proposed bill and followed it directly according to the bill that they proposed, which would require an agency response. But wherever you are, you have a way to do a petition for rulemaking. You can draft legislation. You can do litigation. There are different ways to hit law and to make law and to change law. And if it goes state by state by state, then that's persuasive for the next state and the next state. And eventually there would be a sweeping decision.
One of the things I found so disconcerting about this is this, to me, which seems like a lesson in how to obfuscate from the truth. So when people say wet markets, they then have this picture that happens way over here in China in some dark alley. And indeed, a wet market is just a retail slaughterhouse. And there are retail slaughterhouses all over the United States. In fact, TMZ just did a very brilliant expose on wet markets, retail live slaughterhouses in New York with the help of Edita Bernkrant from NY Class. So I think this is getting into the mainstream, which is something good, but it's almost too little too late. What do you think about that?
I missed the last question. I heard it's great that it's getting into mainstream media, but then did you say, was it too late?
Is it too little too late?
No, it's not too little too late. No, it's always too little too late, because animals are dying every day. So I retract my answer. But no, so long as it's going on, the time is now to make law and to change it. And right now the media has momentum on this topic, especially with slaughterhouses closing, I think, in 13 states, and Tyson saying that the food chain is breaking. and the slaughterhouses being the number one hotspot for COVID outbreaks. I think that closing the live animal wet markets is very relevant right now. It's a very popular argument, and it's about future pandemic prevention hygiene, because the next pandemic can come right out of New York or right out of Chicago. This is not a China problem. This is not a Chinatown problem in New York City either. This is a slaughterhouse problem, and the fact that they are unregulated and disgusting conditions inside.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, bird flu started here in farms across the country. I think in North Carolina, I'm not 100% sure on that. But, Asian bird flu isn't something that happens only in China either, nor is swine flu, mad cow disease, Ebola. These are all things that travel from country to country. They have no boundaries. And many of them have started in the United States in our factory farms. So it's a public health issue that it seems so obvious, which is why I take great offense when there's a full page ad in the New York Times that to me was a bit of fear mongering, a bit of Tyson saying, don't pay attention to how we didn't take care of our workers or JBS or Smithfield, but more remember we're your food supply and you don't want to break your food supply. And I would say, well, the food supply chain is already broken. And if you want a safe and secure future, you need plant-based foods. So I would say that the industry is correcting itself or needs a correction. What do you think about that?
Right. I saw World News last night where they said the headline was the food supply chain is breaking, and that was Tyson who said it. But I think you're absolutely right. It is not that the food supply chain is breaking, it's that it's re-correcting, and that it was already broken. And that's why we have an intervention of Mother Nature right now, because that's what's going on. Mother Nature is intervening. One thing that I think speaks volumes, which was a Jane Unchained exclusive yesterday in the email newsletter, is that JBS, which is the world's largest meat producer, certified vegan with BeVeg, my company, and launched in stores across the United States this month vegan plant-based burgers, vegan plant-based meatballs, vegan plant-based ground, vegan plant-based Mexican ground. So they are going all in, diversifying their protein and trying to give the planet a protein that will be sustainable for the future. So these meat conglomerates and giants are fully aware. Tyson was one of the first investors in Beyond Meat. When he sold his shares, he said he was selling it because he intends to compete in the plant-based space. So every single one of these major meat processing plants, which is code for slaughterhouse, is getting into the plant-based world. So.
Yes, let's talk about that a little bit. So Canadian meat maker Maple Leaf, they have Field Roast and Light Life. They're very deeply involved in the plant-based world. Tyson, as you mentioned, is a venture capitalist. They're now investing in plant-based seafood. They were an investor in Beyond Meat. JBS, I want to hear all about how your company has certified them vegan. That's an interesting, almost an oxymoron.
Not JBS is certified vegan. They have it's their vegan line. It's called Plantera, and their product is Ozo, which you'll see in stores. So the Ozo brand is the name. It's just owned by JBS. It is their offshoot into the plant-based world.
So thank you for correcting me on that, because I think that is so interesting how these companies are having these offshoot product lines that they're trying to build up as they hopefully are decreasing their meat products, which is ultimately what we want as a replacement there. But JBS, I also understand, has spent a lot of money on a plant-based food innovation center. So this line, Ozo, it won't be the first from them, I don't think.
Right. The plant-based, they're innovators, their team of innovators is in Colorado, I believe. And they're really excited about everything that they're launching. They're actually sending me, because even though it's in stores across the country right now, it's, maybe in Kroger's, which is 3 hours away from me, et cetera. So they're mailing me all of their different ones to try. I'll have to do a lunch break live with it and see how it is. But, I think that they're just getting to a point where they don't want to be aligned with JBS. They are owned by JBS, but they want their own identity. And that's why they are a different name and an offshoot of Planterra, Ozo, and this team of innovators is working hard to make it delicious. They're using shiitake mushroom fermentation, pea protein instead of soy. So they're working really hard to make it soy-free, gluten-free, cholesterol-free, and healthy and sustainable.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And as they change their names from a meat company to a protein company, you're seeing that with a lot of the big conglomerates. And you're even seeing Smithfield, which has come under the gun lately for how it was treating its employees during COVID. They even have a line of plant-based burgers called Pure Farmland. So
Yes.
you're seeing more and more of these products come out. But let's talk about BeVeg and what you do in certifying, hopefully more and more of these meat companies as they pivot and shift to plant-based options. How do you tell me about BeVeg, what you do that's different from other vegan certifications? And did you have any trepidation when you were about to certify something like JBS and their new line?
Right. So, yes, but when they contacted us, they did not say they were part of JBS because they're not, they are a different entity. They're not the same entity. They're a totally different LLC company, but they are owned by JBS. And when I knew that, I did have some trepidations and I had a phone call. But after the phone call, I felt comfortable because I see that the innovators are trying really hard to be successful in the plant-based space. And if all these meat conglomerates like Tyson, JBS are successful meat substitutes like Beyond Meat or Impossible Meat, they're not going to resist the plant-based movement because it's not going to be taking dollars out of their pocket. And at the end of the day, this does come down to money. So if slaughtering animals is making them billions of dollars a year, they're going to resist plant-based meat alternatives. But if they can share in the wins and be part of the movement, they're going to be part of the movement. So I see it as a positive because it means that maybe the sector, like if this was a pie and the sector was this much meat, well, now it might be this much meat instead of this much. So I think anything is a step forward and it raises awareness. Plus, new products that launch usually have the hardest time with distribution.
Yes.
JBS, Tyson, Cargill, Smithfield, all these big meat companies that already have distribution in every single grocery store across the country will have immediate wide-scale distribution for any plant-based product that they launch, which means it could be widely popular and widely accessible and affordable fast and get into the consumer's hands fast, which then shows the consumer that they can have an alternative that is delicious, that is accessible. And it's much harder for a vegan startup to have that quick of an immediate reach. I mean, Planterra, the product owned by JBS, but Planterra did launch this month in stores across the country. So their timing is impeccable with what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really commend them. And I don't think there's any way around this equation without working with meat and dairy, because they do have these deep distribution lines, and that's almost impossible for a small startup to have. They also have deep advertising pockets. So they can actually shift the cultural perspective pretty quickly as JBS, well, Planterra owned by JBS, as quickly as they can get a product out. And during COVID times, no easy feat, they can then start changing the worldwide perception about meat, and that maybe plants are what make you manly. So I'm waiting for those big advertising campaigns to come along with these great distribution channels. So I'm all for it. And the more that we shift meat and dairy to be producing plant-based, the faster the world becomes plant-based. It's a lot longer and harder haul if it's just the small vegan companies. So it's very exciting news. So I don't know if you can share with us any other BeVeg certifications coming down the line, but what are you seeing from your perspective as someone who certifies these companies before they go to market?
Okay, so we actually just certified an ice cream company that was a dairy company. It was called San Bernardo, and they did only dairy ice creams, and they just came out with a no bull, dairy-free ice cream line with 8 flavors, and I also asked them for some taste testers.
Sure, you did.
I see Paige was logged in. We're gonna have a taste tester ice cream show.
Great.
It's exciting to see the transition, and I think that all these companies realize that they have to change to stay in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, McDonald's is not going to be able to keep their doors open forever if they don't start offering different options, because the demand is changing. At BeVeg, what we do is vegan certification of products. So when products apply to us, we go through every single ingredient and down the supply chain of those ingredients and make sure that everything is vegan per a vegan standard, which means no animal products and no animal byproducts, no animal testing on the final product, that the manufacturing process wouldn't have any chance of cross-contamination. Mm-hmm. So we have a comprehensive paperwork process with possible audits, and we are moving in the direction of mandatory audits in the future. It's important to also know that when companies apply to us, they have the benefit of the attorney-client privilege. So they are disclosing to us information that is their trade secrets. And so lots of times consumers look at labels and are label conscious, but they, one, are annoyed of reading and tired of reading the tiny print. And two, they don't even realize that many of the tiny print isn't even printed, because the way the laws are today, the government says you do not have to disclose, quote, insignificant ingredients. So what is insignificant ingredients? And legally defined, an insignificant ingredient is an ingredient that's less than 0.5 grams of something per serving. Mm-hmm. That adds up. So if something is 0.45 grams of sugar per serving, you can say it's sugar-free or alcohol-free or vegan, right? So we look into all the ingredients and we ask for them not only to be transparent with their process, but forthcoming. We want them to offer it up. And then we also ask about incidental ingredients. That's another term used by USDA and FDA. And that means any ingredients that may end up in the final product based on the manufacturing process or how a product is made, that there might be any trace animal protein or animal exploitation in the final product.
I think this is really important because, you do read labels, but everyone has seen the certified humane, and we know that that's not a label you can trust. That's more like a marketing scheme than anything else. So I think to have a vegan certification that we can all trust is actually really important. We don't want to leave it to the companies to label themselves because perhaps they're not to the standard that we all agree on. And then even therein, again, some of these certifications I no longer have faith in. I don't know if you can talk to me about humane certification. And I mean, it's so confusing for people, and I want people to understand that it doesn't actually mean humane.
Right. Well, yeah, I can't speak to what other certifications are doing, but I can say for vegan in general, there's a huge lack of regulation and definition in the entire area. The word vegan is not at all defined. It is the Wild West when it comes to what does vegan mean. Anyone can claim they're vegan on their packaging, and no one is holding that vegan claim accountable. So at least if you see a third-party certification of a vegan symbol, you know that somebody went in and audited that company to hold that claim accountable to a standard that was created that they are following. There is a need for there to be a legally defined vegan standard, legally defined vegan labeling laws, truth in labeling laws that are going to be honest and transparent and something that we can all trust. I know with the BeVeg vegan symbol, we're really trying to be that for the consumer. I'm a vegan from birth, born and raised by my mom. So it's important to me, as a vegan, to know exactly what I'm eating or drinking. And I think it's important for those that aren't vegans to know this too, because we all have a right to information, especially regarding what we're putting into our bodies. And right, we're used to having everything at our fingertips, Google everything. So we need to be able to have the information that we want to have when we buy products, and we want to be credible.
I agree firsthand because I have been to Whole Foods and bought cheeses that say plant-based. And then I get them home and I'm cooking with them and I read the label and there's whey in there. And I'm furious.
Right.
And I go right back to Whole Foods and I say, like, you're not doing your job here because you're carrying products that are completely mislabeled and are misleading the consumer, and very disconcerting.
So was it labeled vegan or just plant-based?
It was labeled plant-based, but it had
different.
dairy. It had dairy in it. So, you know, it had whey.
But
so
see, I think that plant-based, okay. I think that that's a cop-out in labeling, and it's misleading.
I do too.
Plant-based means that it's mostly plant-based, right? It's plant-based. Plant-based is not vegan at all. And I understand plant-based is more popular, and plant-based is the trend now for those that are transitional. But if you are looking for a vegan product, you do not want something that only says plant-based. You want a vegan claim and a certification.
Because you want to be 100% sure. Yes.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do too. I do too. Well, let's talk a little bit about, we have BeVeg, but also you have a new show launching on Jane Unchained. So I want to talk a little bit about you personally, what you're up to. Tell me about the new legal show, which launches tomorrow on this station. What's the time and what's the title?
Okay, it's going to be weekly at noon Eastern Standard Time, 9 Pacific, and it's called The Laws That Matter, Veganism and the Law. So we will talk about legal topics. Tomorrow we'll discuss the wet markets and what's going on. We're going to have a panel of guests tomorrow for everyone that's been on the front lines, from Slaughter-Free New York to Adita's going to be here, Allie's going to be here, Nora's going to be here. So regulars that you've seen on Jane Unchained. I don't want to mess up their titles because they're all new to me. Do you know? Yeah, it's probably best if I'm tomorrow introduce them properly. But I think it's New York City Lass.
NY Class, I thought.
Class, okay.
Yes.
See,
Edita Bernkrant, and she's the executive director of NY Class.
Okay, and then Nora,
whom I don't know.
She's a lawyer.
Okay.
Okay, she's a lawyer, and she's an animal rights activist who's been on the ground with these slaughterhouses in New York as well for a while. And we're gonna have Allie, who's a lobbyist.
Wonderful. So really strong legal panel tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific, right here on Jane Unchained.
Right. And we'll have a nice conversation regarding what's going on with the slaughter markets. And I think it's really timely, especially because this week we've had TMZ, we've had Fox News, we've had CBS. So tomorrow we get to talk to all the people that have been featured on national television for
even
this topic.
KTLA, I believe, in Los Angeles has covered.
Compassion for Legislation as well. Right.
Judy Mancuso, is she going to be on your show tomorrow?
I am not sure she's going to be on the panel tomorrow. I have to check.
Okay. Well, I'd be looking for the legal show.
Topic.
Yes. Okay. So every Wednesday, 9 a.m. right here on Jane Unchained, The Laws That Matter. I love it. I love that Carissa Kranz will be breaking down all the legal issues so that we can understand them, just like I break down on the Plant-Based Business Hour, all the business issues, so that everybody has this information at their fingertips. So you said something really quickly before we started talking about legal issues that I think is so interesting. You have been vegan since birth. Tell me why your parents did that, and you're still standing. So apparently you haven't died. You've gotten enough protein, and you've lived to tell.
Yes. So my mom was raised vegetarian, and I'm fourth generation veg in my mom's side of the family. Wow. She went vegan when she was pregnant with me because she decided to cut dairy out of her diet. She said it didn't make her feel good. So it was a health decision initially. But I'm an ethical vegan. I made the decision when my parents got divorced when I was 5 to stay that way, because I understood what it was. So
tell me what was going through your head as a 5-year-old.
I I was just really aware. My mom said, you're going to your dad's half the week and he's going to try to feed you chicken and fish and whatever. And this is what it is. I can't control what you do when you're there. And I was horrified at what it was and wanted no part of that. So I just made it, I don't know. I mean, I remember the decision, and my mom probably doesn't even remember the conversation, but I remember the conversation, and I remember the clear decision in my mind that this was my choice and no one was going to change my mind.
And so your dad went with it?
Not so easily in the beginning. No. Nope. He thought I wasn't getting my protein and my calcium, and I needed to see a nutritionist. And he thought, I mean, back then the food pyramid was what it was. It's not what it is today. It was meat and dairy that you needed. So no, he was concerned about me. But I think it turned out fine.
Yes. Yes. I mean, we should mention here your legal expertise is almost daunting because you're so skilled in this area and so articulate. But you didn't start out this way. You're a ballerina also by trade, I guess I'll say, birth, trade. So, I mean, you're really an athlete. You're an athlete who's been vegan their entire life. I think that speaks because ballet, for those who don't know.
I've never broken a bone in my body.
For example, you see, and ballet is so hard on the body. It really is like the beautiful torture. You're on your toes and there's hours at the bar. And I mean, it's much more of a grueling sport than people realize. And so, you're here eating no dairy, no meat your whole life and are a promising athlete. Right. So I just love that.
Exactly. And I danced 8 hours a day and I didn't run out of energy and I didn't break any bones and I never was weak because of it. And I think now people are seeing that because of documentaries like Game Changers, and there are other athletes out there that are vegan and amazing, but I certainly faced discrimination.
Oh, interesting.
For this.
As a kid, did other kids tease you or other kids? That's always disconcerting to me because kids love animals and you would think that they would see that immediate connection, but of course they don't want people to be different than themselves. So I also understand that. Yeah, no, I was made fun of whatever I had for lunch. If it was a tofu salad sandwich, people would be like, ew, what's that? And, now tofu's mainstream. Tofu wasn't mainstream when I was growing up. Right. I live on tofu. Yeah. So I was really made fun of. From your perspective, because you do see all of these companies coming to you before we ever get to see them on the shelves, companies like JBS's Planterra and Ozo, what are your predictions for the future? So we all know it's going vegan, so that we know. But beyond that prediction, where do you see us going, let's say in the short term, the next 5 years? I think food safety is going to be important. And I think that's one reason why I'm proud to be in BeVeg vegan certification and labeling, because not only is it about no cross-contamination of meat, it's also about food safety. I mean, all these pandemics that we're dealing with right now are zoonotic in nature, and the Centers for Disease Control will tell you that 3 out of 4 pandemics are of animal origin from the exploitation of animals. So whether that is going to be vegan certification or lab-grown meat or a return to a more plant-based diet, at least cutting back on meat, I think we're going to see a big trend in that. I think you're going to see not only are the big meat conglomerates going to invest in their own plant-based alternative meat lines, which hopefully they'll certify vegan and be fully vegan. I think in addition to that, they are going to be also investing in, they may not be launching their own, but investing in lab-grown meat technologies, which will be a more humane meat. I think that's where we're headed. I don't think the world is going vegan in 5 years. I think that it'd be great if we stopped. It would be a great win if we could stop the killing of all animals within the next 5 years and go transition to a more lab-based, clean meat is what it is. It's cleaner meat. I mean, if pigs, 80% of them are getting slaughtered with pneumonia and they all have abscesses and cancer and swine flu and avian flu and mad cow disease and
when they're
Ebola.
sucking up, yes, and Ebola and Salmonella, which is from the feces, and 100% of meat products are found to have feces on it. And that's not going to be in lab-grown meat. Feces aren't going to be in lab-grown meat. That's going to be clean meat. So I think that it will be a win. For me, I think the world needs to get to a point where we stop craving flesh and blood of another. I think until we get to that point, we're never going to have peace on Earth, and we're always going to be at war with each other and have a problem in a planet. But if it would be such a big step to just end the suffering of all the animals, because right now, too many animals, billions and billions and billions and billions of animals a year are getting murdered, and that creates a global suffering. Whether we are aware of it or not, it is a collective consciousness, and we are all being affected by that. And we must stop.
Absolutely. About 100 billion animals a year are slaughtered for about 7.7 billion people on the planet. And that's every year, 100 billion every year. That's including fish. So you're talking about astronomical numbers. And if you don't curb that kind of hatred, anger, pain, grief, you're not going to cure all the other ailments that we have as a society. They're very linked, and we saw this through the pandemic. How you treat the animals, it's not just that you're slaughtering them, it's that they're living nose to nose and right on top of each other. So the conditions in which they live and all of the environment that you cut down to have more factory farms or to grow more grains to feed more factory farms, which is silly because we could give these grains, which have fiber and protein, to people, but we don't. We give them to animals. So the more we cut down the natural barrier between us and wild animals, in addition to the conditions in which they live, the more we're going to have pandemics. This will not be the last pandemic by any means. So I think, as you talked about earlier, as conglomerates start shifting, they're going to really want to have equity in this space, because there's really almost no other mathematical equation out there. I mean, there's not really the option to stick with meat and dairy in terms of the resources on the planet and changing consumer behaviors. And as you say, food safety issues. Now consumers are directly aware of all of the food safety issues. So I think, it's also going to be harder to employ people at these places. Nobody wants to work there. And it's not just the low income workers who have to take these slaughterhouse jobs. Nobody wants to be the accountant for JBS or the marketing person for the meat slaughter company when they know that they're just lies basically on the cartons of milk, et cetera. So I think we have nowhere to go but plant-based. I just don't know how fast it's going to happen.
Right. I think that there will be a point where Mother Nature is going to force us there, like it is doing right now, because the planet, just in an environmental sense, cannot sustain the clearing of our rainforests to raise cattle and all the water and the grain and our resources going to the livestock. So I think that this pandemic is a wake-up call.
I hope so.
Well, the question is will we listen? Because I think the universe is speaking loud and clear about what we're supposed to do. I mean, first it's a pandemic that's out of a wet market. Then most of us have never heard of a wet market. Now the world knows what a wet market is, that it's a slaughterhouse that's wet because of the blood, the guts, the urine, the feces, and the water that's washing it all away.
And it's retail. It's people buying right there on the spot.
Right. No one really knew what that was before. So now we might have a global ban of that, or at least a US ban of live animal wet markets. I think that, the pandemic is waking up the world to the issues. I've never heard the media talk about zoonotic diseases and viruses and wet markets, and they're talking about it now. The dialogue has happened. And then after that dialogue happened, then you have both sides of the aisle of Congress aligning on this issue. And then you have outbreaks at slaughterhouses across the United States for coronavirus, and that people are dying there. Workers are dying, and that's even being covered up. So if we don't get it right now, I think more human lives are going to be lost, because we cannot continue on this destructive path anymore.
Yes, and I just want to underscore, of course, there are superheroes like Carissa who are putting forth new bills that hopefully will be responded to by politicians. But it can't just be Carissa. It has to be all of us. So we have to stand up and demand from our politicians that there is oversight, that laws change. I mean, we talk about the covering up. We started our conversation by talking about this full page ad that was in the New York Times trying to divert everyone's attention away from the fact that workers were not protected. They were not allowed to have 6 feet of distancing, and they all got sick and were, encouraged, forced, however you want to say it, to work in unsafe conditions. There's a lawsuit right now, as reported by Veg Economist and Veg News Magazine, that Smithfield is undergoing a lawsuit because it was putting the workers and the community at risk for not protecting them against COVID. So these kind of ag-gag laws, it can't just be Carissa taking on the legal system. In 11 or 13 states, there are laws that don't allow you to go in and film what happens in a slaughterhouse. So information is withheld from us by law. That's the current system that we live in. Information is withheld from us by law. We have to speak up. So if you have a slaughterhouse or retail slaughterhouse or a wet market in your backyard, and there's a chance that you do if you live in California, Illinois, or New York, you must speak out. You are such a speaker, Carissa. Would you give anybody tips on how to take on their politicians or how to approach them?
No, I think you just have to go for it and just go for it. I mean, when I filed a petition for rulemaking in New York based on a proposed bill, that's very different than filing something that's based on a bill that's been passed, but it's still important. It still raises awareness. It still gets CBS News's attention. And I think it's important to just continue fighting for the cause and taking your skill set and applying it to how you can make the world a better place. So if you're a lawyer, you can try to use your legal skills or your bar license in the states that need help where you are licensed and do what you can to affect change. But I don't think there's any one way because we're all trying to change and make law together. So it's a living, breathing process. So yeah.
And therein lies the beauty of democracy. So use your voice, folks. You have it. It is your strongest tool. Use your dollars, use your purchasing power to align with your values and use your voice. That's what America is made up of. I have a couple exit questions for you that I just want to ask kind of on the quick fly. What do you wish you knew 10 years ago that you know now?
I didn't get to plan for these, huh?
Fair enough.
I think 10 years ago, I think as you go through life, you learn to trust yourself more. And I think 10 years ago, I would be more fearful about doing things that I would really want to do. And now I'm much more about, I don't care, I'm going for this. And if it doesn't happen, that's fine. I'll just go for the next thing. And most of the time, if you go for it and you put your energy into something, it will work out. Or that it's for a reason that you did that, because then another door will open. I think I wish that I understood how to trust in myself more 10 years ago. And I still need to trust in myself more today. I still have that issue. I think we all do, but I think it's important to trust yourself and go for things. And why not you? I mean,
I love that.
Why not you?
I love that. Why not you? There's so very few benefits of aging, but I really think that is one of them, learning to trust yourself. You've just been around the block enough that you finally say to yourself, oh, I got this. Maybe it won't work out, but it's not going to kill me. I'll do it and I'll follow my heart, and, I'll just keep getting up until it all works out. So speaking about getting back up, let's say you've had a bad day, and a lot of people have had a string of them now with coronavirus. Is there one phrase that you rely on, something to get yourself back in the game and get you back ready to be your wonderful self?
A phrase? I don't know. I go to ballet class still. I think that's what I do to get myself back in the game. Yes. And I'm taking ballet on my balcony now on Zoom daily during this whole coronavirus. I don't know about a saying. I think I always
Okay.
return back to the ballet bar.
Oh, that's wonderful. That sort of centers you, literally, I guess. Well, okay, so we're just about to wrap up, but here you are with BeVeg, a vegan certification company. So you get to certify a lot of foods and beverages. You don't have to name any one brand, but I'm wondering if you have a favorite snack or a favorite junk food.
Okay, you cut out. I certify a lot of vegan beverages and foods, and then
I wonder if you have a favorite snack or junk food.
that's certified?
Nope, it can be whatever you want.
I'm not really into junk food, to be honest.
Of course you're not.
I grew so sugar's addictive, right? Like tobacco so my mom didn't let me have it growing up. So I didn't develop the craving for it. I don't know. I love just vegan. I love eggplant parmesan that's vegan. That's one of my favorite dishes. Or a nice glass of vegan BeVeg certified wine. We have a free app at BeVeg for alcohol, which catalogs all the vegan beverages that are either certified or claimed to be vegan or not vegan. And the app is interactive. A lot of it says no info because we pulled beverages from the Tobacco and Trade Bureau. So we have about 1 million beverages in our database, and it's becoming interactive with the consumer so the consumer can help us update the app and get information.
Okay.
A nice glass of wine is good.
Yesterday I had Querciabella here. Have you certified them, Querciabella wine in Italy?
Which wine in Italy? I don't think we've certified them.
Querciabella. Okay,
no,
I'll send you their information so you can certify them with BeVeg. Sebastiano Cosia Castiglione was on yesterday, and he has a vegan wine company. So I will put you two in touch. I want to say 2 things. Don't go anywhere, everybody, because we have a follow-up show right after this. But I do want to thank Carissa for being with me. Carissa Kranz, you are the founder and CEO of BeVeg. So that's beveg.com, BEVEG.com. Everyone go to her for your new product that you want to have launched as you all launch yourselves into the vegan world. And then more than anything, your show tomorrow, 9 a.m., The Laws That Matter on Jane Unchained. That's 9 a.m. Pacific. And please do come back to the Plant-Based Business Hour and keep us updated on what happens with the laws that you are trying to get passed in New York.
Okay, will do. Thanks, Elysabeth.
Thank you so much.